Hello, my name is Natalia Devlin. The title of this presentation is Engaging Refugee Youth Through Library Programming. I prepared this presentation in spring of 2021 as part of my graduate work for the course Selecting Multicultural Materials for Children and Young Adults for the Master's Program in Information and Library Science at University at Buffalo. I hope that as a result of this presentation, the viewers will be able to identify needs and barriers of refugee youth that characterize them as a distinct population, examine best practices in developing programming for refugee youth, and use background information on specific refugee groups and existing examples of programming to initiate own program planning. So let me give you a tour of my poster. Although refugees aren't always viewed as a specific culture, they're unified by traumatic experiences endured prior to arrival to the US and similar challenges they encounter after starting their new life in America. Eliza Dreisong, in our course material Diversity in Youth Literature, edited by Naidu and Devlin, defines diversity as any cultures that lack power or authority in the society. Such broad definition certainly includes refugees, a population with no power or authority in countries they leave, and countries that welcome them, and makes it critical for librarians and educators to consider refugees as a distinct group. Because refugees aren't a homogeneous group characterized by the same faith, ethnicity, or origin, practitioners have to continuously readjust their strategies in supporting this population. When admission numbers are reduced, it causes many refugee resettlement agencies and expert community organizations to close their doors or reduce services. When the admission ceiling increases, the infrastructure and professional skill set needed for serving refugees has to be rebuilt from scratch. These changes in national policy directly impact public libraries as places of access to information and sources for generating social capital and community trust, and demand immediate attention to strategic planning of programming and services focused on refugee youth, who oftentimes comprise as much as half of refugees admitted to the US. In Figure 1, you can see how much refugee admission numbers fluctuate from year to year, which makes it especially challenging for practitioners and activists in the community to provide adequate and sustainable services on a prolonged basis. In Figure 2, you see the top 10 countries of origin of refugees that came to the US in 2018. So the top 3 countries are DRC or Democratic Republic of Congo, Burma, and Ukraine. Think about how far apart these countries are and how different the cultural and linguistic backgrounds of nationals of these countries could be. That certainly presents a challenge for practitioners preparing to serve refugees. It is important to know that refugees are resettled in almost every state in the US, and they're referred to the US by the United Nations High Commission on Refugees. And US authorities spend 18 to 24 months vetting or verifying the refugee status of these individuals and their background. The definition of a refugee person you see here has been adopted in the US. It is worth highlighting that what establishes the refugee status is persecution or fear of persecution. You can imagine that refugees that arrive to the US are escaping extreme danger to their livelihood and may be dealing with trauma from witnessing or personally experiencing violence and threats. Upon arrival to the US, refugees are welcomed by resettlement agencies that help them with finding housing and jobs. Refugees are brought here on the premise that they will start repaying their travel expenses within 6 months upon arrival to the US. Thus, most adults in each refugee family start working right away. I put together this graphic representation of refugee youth needs and barriers based on the literature review by Jalen McBrien. McBrien identified 2 main needs for refugee children and adolescents: psychosocial well-being and language acquisition. Language acquisition as a need is obvious because most refugees don't speak English and had very minimal English training before arriving to the US. The other need, psychosocial well-being, stems from stressful and traumatic experiences that refugees encountered in their countries of origin. These 2 main needs are often impacted by the following factors: parental, societal factors, as well as deeper stereotypes and prejudice. Parental factors. Here we should talk about continuous tensions between older and younger members of the same family, where children and adolescents are trying to assimilate at school and in the community, and their parents and grandparents want to instill the values they are familiar with from their own culture. At the same time, parents also rely on children for translation because parents are forced to get the job right away and don't have time for English classes, whereas their children receive language acquisition support at school. You might encounter situations where children translate medical and legal appointments, meetings with landlords, and more. The second set of factors, societal factors, has to do with how the greater society accepts or rejects refugees. Are they seen as a threat or inconvenience, or are they welcomed and supported? And lastly, oftentimes young refugees might encounter a more sinister set of factors, which has to do with stereotypes about their race, ethnicity, faith, and more. Unfortunately, sometimes stereotyping and prejudice result in lack of equity with which refugees are served in the community or integrated in the fabric of the larger society. Linda Jacobson, a practitioner in school librarianship, identified the following 3 strategies which help successfully engage young refugees in library services. First, conduct outreach in local schools and community spots frequented by refugee families, such as places of worship, stores, refugee agencies, and other supporting nonprofits. Second, leverage partnerships with other organizations known as experts in a specific culture or language. And finally, target entire families through intergenerational programming. These examples from the field support Jacobson's suggestions of strategy. For example, you could venture out, like a public library in Maryland, which designed an outreach program at an apartment complex which houses many refugees from many countries. The library facilitates on-site mother-child story time combined with English language learning and also offers homework assistance club. The second example I have engages entire families. A public library in central New York partnered with several local organizations to offer a book distribution and intergenerational literacy program to Karen-speaking refugees from Burma. And this example from Germany is also very interesting because it helps young refugees build social capital. The International Youth Library in Munich designed storytelling workshops that connected young refugees with their German-speaking peers and helped them process their traumatic past in a very artful and complex storytelling experience. Finally, how do you go about developing your own refugee programs and services? I would suggest to start planning by learning. 2 important steps here are learning about the population you might encounter and learning about programs that may have been developed by other practitioners in the past. Here are the 3 resources I recommend for learning about refugee populations. The Refugee Processing Center at the Department of State publishes new admission numbers monthly. You can go to their website and find out about the main populations arriving to your state this month. Center for Applied Linguistics used to produce informational bulletins on each new group arriving to the US up until 2014, and many of their brochures are still valid. Minority Rights Group International provides profiles for many minority and indigenous groups around the world and talks about specific challenges they face and about their cultures. Various initiatives by the American Library Association compiled collections of programming examples that might work for your library. You should definitely read the white paper on New Americans produced in 2019, which includes strategy and programming recommendations. There's also this amazing website, Programming Librarian, which has countless programming ideas, and some of them have immigrant and refugee focus. I think digital storytelling, TED Talks, and maybe even walk clubs could be great solutions for engaging refugees in your services. In conclusion, I would like to say that the challenges of engaging refugee youth in programming are shaped by unique circumstances of refugee life. The trauma they experienced in the past, the tensions between society and family they experience right now, and the hostility that sometimes is shaped by the public political discourse. These complex issues necessitate evidence-based strategic planning for refugee youth inclusion in public libraries.